Outpost Kepri was never meant to become famous. It was a small human mining station built into the ice cliffs of a dead moon near the edge of map space. The crews there lived simple lives. They dug rare crystals from frozen rock, repaired old machines, and waited months for supply ships that often came late. Nothing important was supposed to happen there. That was why the attack made no sense. At first, the workers thought the shaking came from deep drilling. Then the warning lights turned red. A second later, the sky above the moon flashed white, and every screen inside the station went black. Mara Vance, one of the station's communication officers, grabbed the side of her desk as the floor trembled under her boots. A loud alarm screamed through the hallways. Orbital contact loss. Defense ring destroyed. Unknown vessels entering low orbit. The words came from the emergency system in a cold machine voice. Around her, people froze. Then panic spread like fire. Kepri had no real defenses. It was a mining outpost, not a fortress. Mara ran toward the main comm chamber, while heavy impacts thundered above. Somewhere outside, metal screamed. The enemy ships were not broadcasting any known language, any warning, or any demand. They had simply arrived and started tearing the station apart. Inside the command room, broken signals flashed across the damaged screens. One of the officers whispered the words no one wanted to hear. "They're not raiding us," he said. "They're erasing us." Then a new signal appeared. It did not come from the moon. It did not come from any nearby human world. It rose from deep space beyond the dark nebula, from a region where no ship could safely travel. At first it looked like static. Then the static formed a pattern. Old, precise, human. Mara stared at the screen as the room fell silent, because whatever was coming out of that darkness had been waiting for this moment, and it was getting closer. The alarms inside Outpost Kepri did not stop. Red lights flashed across the narrow metal halls, while the station shook again and again. Somewhere above the ice cliffs, alien ships were still firing. Every blast echoed through the structure like distant thunder. Inside the main communication chamber, Mara Vance tried to focus on the screen in front of her. The strange signal was still there. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. "Is it coming from the attackers?" One of the engineers asked nervously. Mara shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "It's coming from outside the system." That answer only made the room more silent. Outside the system meant far beyond the mining routes. It meant the dark region of space called the Perseus Drift, a wide cloud of radiation and broken asteroids where navigation systems often failed. Human ships avoided it. Alien ships avoided it too. Nothing lived there. At least that was what everyone believed. Mara leaned closer to the console and adjusted the signal filters. The strange transmission slowly became clearer. It was not random noise. It was a structured pattern. Numbers, coordinates, and something else. "Wait," Mara whispered. She tapped the keyboard quickly. The computer translated the pattern into an old communication format used by early human exploration fleets more than 100 years ago. That was impossible. Those fleets had disappeared long ago. Behind her, Station Commander Elias Rourke stepped closer. Rourke was an older man with gray hair and a calm voice that rarely showed fear. But when he looked at the screen, even he seemed confused. "Is it human?" he asked. "Yes," Mara answered, "but it's using an outdated protocol. No modern fleet uses the system anymore." Another explosion shook the station. Dust fell from the ceiling panels. A voice from security control shouted through the intercom. "Commander, the alien ships are landing ground forces near the mining tunnels." Rourke clenched his jaw. "How many ships are in orbit?" he asked. 7 confirmed vessels," the officer replied. "Unknown class. Heavy weapons." 7 warships were more than enough to destroy a small mining outpost. Rourke knew the truth. Kepri would not survive a direct assault. He turned back to Mara. "Can you answer the signal?" "I think so," she said. "But I don't understand the message yet." The signal repeated again. Slow, calm, intentional. It was not a distress call. It was not a warning. It was more like a response. Mara adjusted the filters again and finally decoded the first clear sentence. Her eyes widened. "What is it?" Rourke asked. Mara hesitated. Then she read the message aloud. "Human installation detected under hostile attack." She swallowed slowly. "Defense response acknowledged." The room went completely silent. One of the technicians laughed nervously. "That has to be a mistake," he said. "No one even knows we're here. This outpost is barely on the maps." Mara shook her head slowly. "It's not a mistake." The signal continued. More lines appeared. "Stand by." "Intervention authorized." "Arrival imminent." Rourke stared at the screen. "Arrival," he said. Mara turned to the navigation window that showed the star system. The display highlighted the source of the transmission far beyond the nebula cloud. Something was moving there. At first, it was only a faint distortion in the sensor data. Then the long-range scanners updated. One of the officers leaned closer to the screen. "That can't be right." "Sensor error," another technician said quickly, but the numbers did not change. Something massive had just entered the outer edge of the system. Not one ship, not a fleet, a single object. And it was enormous. Meanwhile, above the frozen moon, the alien fleet continued its attack. Their ships were sharp and dark, shaped like blades cutting to the vacuum of space. Energy beams flashed across the sky as they destroyed the last orbital defense drones around Kepri. Inside one of the alien command vessels, Commander Vexer observed the battlefield calmly. The alien species known as the Taurathi Dominion had expanded across several star systems in the last century. Their leaders believed strongly in dominance and resource control. When their scouts discovered Kepri's mining operations, they made a simple decision: take the resources, remove the humans. To Vexer, the battle felt almost boring. "These humans defend a mining rock with no warships," he said to his tactical officer. "They are inefficient." The tactical officer tilted his head. "Ground forces are deploying now," he replied. "Resistance is minimal." Vexer nodded. "Good." He turned toward the main view screen, showing the frozen moon below. Explosions flashed across the mining facilities as Taurathi dropships descended toward the surface. The operation would be finished within the hour. Then a warning tone interrupted the comm bridge. A sensor officer looked confused. "Commander, we are detecting an unusual gravitational disturbance." Vexer frowned. "Source." The officer adjusted the scanners. "Outer system edge. Direction of the Perseus drift." Vexer crossed his arms. "That region contains no navigable routes. Likely an asteroid shift." But the sensors kept updating. More data appeared, and the officer's voice slowly changed from confusion to alarm. "Commander, it's not an asteroid." The bridge crew watched as the display magnified the incoming object. Even the Taurathi scanners struggled to understand it. The object moved slowly but with perfect control. Its structure was massive and complex, surrounded by strange energy fields that did not match any known propulsion system. One officer whispered something in the Taurathi language. "A vessel?" Vexer leaned closer to the display, but it did not look like any vessel he had ever seen. The object was long, impossibly long. Its surface carried ancient human design markings mixed with unfamiliar technology. Huge sections of the structure seemed older than most modern warships, yet the energy readings were far stronger than anything in the Taurathi fleet. The computer tried to calculate the size. Then it stopped. The number exceeded the scanner limits. Vexer felt the first small wave of uncertainty. "Identify the craft," he ordered. The computer searched every database. Then the answer appeared. "Unknown human construct. Estimated length, 22 kilometers. Estimated mass, classified/indeterminate." The bridge crew stared at the screen. 22 kilometers was larger than some space stations, and it was moving directly toward the battlefield. Back on Outpost Kepri, Mara and the other officers watched the same sensor feed. The object was now visible on the long-range display. A massive shadow crossing the starfield. The station engineer spoke quietly. "That's not a fleet." "No," Mara said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's just one ship." Commander Rourke looked confused. "A single ship that large?" Mara nodded slowly. But something about the design felt strange. The ship did not move like modern warships. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if it had all the time in the universe. The signal transmission continued. Now it carried a final message. Human installation, Kepri. Defensive intervention in progress. Do not interfere. One of the technicians laughed nervously again. Do not interfere, he said, with the ones under attack. But Mara was not laughing, because the signal included one more line. And this line made her stomach turn. Authorization code, Earth Strategic Archive. She had heard that phrase before, only once, years ago during academy training. It referred to something that most people believed was only a rumor. Ancient human contingency systems. Deep space defense constructs built during humanity's earliest wars among the stars. Machines designed to wait, sometimes for centuries, and respond when human lives were threatened. Mara looked again at the massive object approaching from the darkness. Commander, she said slowly, I think that ship has been waiting out there for a very long time. Outside the station windows, the alien fleet still filled the sky. They had no idea what was coming. And in the dark silence of deep space, the giant vessel continued its slow approach toward the system, like something ancient finally waking up. But the most frightening thing was not its size. It was the energy readings, because the scanners had just detected something else. The massive ship was not alone. Hidden inside its structure, hundreds of smaller signals were beginning to activate, and whatever they were preparing to launch. Far beyond the frozen moon of Kepri, the massive object continued its slow approach through the star system. The stars behind it looked distorted, as if space itself was bending around the ship's enormous structure. Its surface was dark metal layered with ancient human engineering, huge armor plates, long silent antenna towers, and engine sections so large they looked like entire cities built into the hull. Inside Outpost Kepri, Mara Vance could barely breathe as she watched the sensor display. The giant vessel was now clearly visible. It moved slowly but steadily toward the center of the system, where the Talrathi fleet was attacking the moon. Commander Rourke folded his arms and stared at the screen. How could something that large exist without anyone knowing? He asked. No one in the room had an answer. One of the engineers spoke quietly. Commander, look at the registry markings. Mara zoomed the camera feed closer. At first the letters were faded and damaged by time, but slowly the old human language became clear across the side of the ship. SciFi Aegis Protocol. Below it was a symbol used only during the earliest days of human expansion, the symbol of the Strategic Archive program. Mara felt a cold wave run through her chest. That program was canceled, she said. Rourke looked at her. When? Over 90 years ago. She remembered the history lessons from the Academy. During the early decades of human exploration, Earth feared that distant colonies could be isolated or attacked without warning. Travel across space was slow then, and communication delays could take weeks. So Earth created a secret program. Massive autonomous defense vessels were built and sent to remote regions of space. They were designed to remain hidden and dormant until a human colony was threatened. Then they would respond. No crew, no orders, just ancient protocols. But the program had been abandoned after newer, faster fleets were built. Most historians believe the ships were never even completed. Yet the enormous vessel now entering the system looked very real and very old. Above the moon, the Talrathi fleet continued its assault. Drop ships descended through the thin atmosphere, while orbital cannons fired toward the surface mining stations. Commander Vexer watched the progress with calm satisfaction. Ground forces report resistance is collapsing, his tactical officer said. Excellent, Vexer replied. But the strange object approaching the system had not left his mind. Status of the unidentified vessel, he asked. The sensor officer adjusted the display. It continues approaching, Commander. Current distance, 2.7 million kilometers. Velocity, low but constant. Vexer studied the data. Is it transmitting? Yes. Translation? The officer paused. It appears to be broadcasting in human language, but also repeating the message on open frequencies. What does it say? The officer hesitated. Then he read the message slowly. Human Defensive Authority, recognize. Hostile forces detected. Intervention protocol active. Vexor narrowed his eyes. Intervention? He repeated. The Talrathi fleet had faced human patrol ships before. Their technology was comparable, sometimes even weaker than Talrathi warships. But this vessel was something else. Its mass alone was greater than any warship Vexor had ever seen. Prepare a warning transmission, he ordered. The communications officer nodded. Moments later, a signal left the Talrathi flagship. Unknown vessel, the message said. You are entering a Dominion military operations zone. Alter course immediately. There was no response. The giant ship continued moving forward. Inside Mysteria's vessel, deep within layers of silent corridors and sealed chambers, something ancient began to awaken. For decades, the ship had drifted quietly within the shadows of the Perseus Drift. Its system slept in low-power mode, waiting, listening, watching. When the distress signals from Kepri were detected, the core systems activated. Massive reactors deep inside the hull slowly came online. Energy moved through huge cables and power conduits that had not carried full current in nearly a century. In the center of the ship was the command core. No human crew stood there. Instead, a single intelligence system managed a vessel. Designation: Archon. Archon was not exactly an artificial intelligence. It was something older and simpler, a strategic control program designed to follow the defense protocols written long ago on Earth. Its purpose was clear: protect human lives. When Archon detected the Talrathi attack on Outpost Kepri, the decision process took less than 3 seconds. Threat confirmed. Intervention authorized. Now the ship's systems continued activating. Hundreds of internal launch bays opened. Defense drones powered on. Long-range scanners mapped every ship in the Talrathi fleet. Archon observed them carefully. 7 warships, multiple ground assault craft, orbital bombardment weapons. Threat level: moderate. Archon calculated the response. No emotion, no hesitation, just logic. Back on Kepri, Mara noticed something new on the sensor screen. Commander, the ship just increased power output. Rourke leaned closer. What kind of power? Everything. The readings spiked across every system. Reactor output, shield generators, weapon arrays. But something else caught Mara's attention. The massive ship was opening sections along its outer hull. Hundreds of small doors sliding apart. What are those? An engineer asked. Mara zoomed the image. Inside the openings were rows of smaller objects. Craft, drones, fighters, automated defense vessels. And they were beginning to launch. In orbit, the Talrathi fleet detected the same activity. Commander Vexor watched the tactical display with growing concern. Commander, the sensor officer said. New contacts emerging from the unidentified vessel. How many? The officer hesitated. More than 200. Small, fast signals spread outward from a giant ship, like a swarm. They moved in tight formation, heading directly toward the Talrathi fleet. Vexor gave a sharp command. All ships prepare defensive formation. Energy shields ignited around the Talrathi warships. Weapon batteries rotated toward the incoming swarm. Fire when targets enter range. The first drones moved quickly, faster than expected. Vexor watched the tactical display carefully. Then he noticed something strange. They are not attacking, he said. The drones slowed as they approached the fleet. Instead of firing, they began spreading out, forming a wide circular pattern around the battlefield. What are they doing? The tactical officer asked. No one knew. Back on the massive human vessel, Archon completed the deployment. Phase 1 was finished. The drones were now in position. Archon activated the next step. A transmission was sent to every Talrathi ship. The message was short, clear, and impossible to misunderstand. Hostile forces detected within human defensive jurisdiction. Cease attack operations immediately. Withdraw from system. Failure to comply will result in forced disarmament. On the Talrathi flagship, the bridge erupted in anger. Commander Vexor slammed his hand on the command rail. Disarmament, he said. We are the Dominion fleet. His officers waited for his decision. Vexor stared at the tactical display again. 200 drones surrounding the battlefield, one massive unknown vessel beyond them, but still only a single ship. The Talrathi fleet had destroyed human patrol groups before, and Vexer had no intention of retreating. "Prepare strike weapons," he ordered. The tactical officer looked uncertain. "Commander, we do not know the full capabilities of that vessel." Vexer's voice turned cold. "Then we will learn." He raised his hand. "Target the drones first." Moments later, the Talrathi warships fired. Energy cannons flashed across space. The first drone exploded instantly, then the second, and the third. On Kepri, Mara watched the battle begin. Her stomach dropped. "They just attacked it," she whispered. Commander Rourke shook his head slowly. Then they made a mistake. Because on the sensor screen, something changed. The giant vessel's energy output suddenly increased again, and for the first time since entering the system, the ancient ship began to accelerate, not slowly, not calmly, but with terrifying power. And every drone in the battlefield suddenly switched to combat mode. Space above the frozen moon changed in seconds. The Talrathi fleet had expected a battle. What they did not expect was the way the ancient human vessel reacted. When the first drones were destroyed, the remaining drones did not rush forward in anger. They did not scatter in panic. Instead, they moved with calm precision. On the tactical screens of every ship in the system, the small human machines began shifting positions. They spread wider, forming a perfect sphere around the Talrathi fleet. Commander Vexer watched the movement carefully from the bridge of his flagship. "They are surrounding us," one officer said. "That is obvious," Vexer replied. But something about the drones bothered him. They were not firing, not yet, and the giant vessel still remained far beyond the immediate battlefield. It was not rushing to attack. It was watching, calculating. Back on Outpost Kepri, Mara noticed the same strange pattern. The drones had stopped advancing. They were simply holding position. Commander Rourke frowned. "That's not a normal attack pattern," he said. "No," Mara replied. "They're controlling the battlefield." The station sensors displayed the full formation now. 200 drones placed in precise positions around the Talrathi ships. And behind them, the massive vessel slowly moved closer. But it still had not fired a single weapon. Inside the ancient ship, the Archon system continued processing tactical data. The Talrathi fleet was powerful but predictable. Their weapons were strong, but their command style relied heavily on aggression. Archon had studied thousands of historical combat scenarios. The conclusion was simple. Direct destruction was not necessary. The objective was protection of the human outpost. The most efficient solution was neutralization, not annihilation. Archon activated the next protocol. In orbit, the Talrathi fleet fired again. More energy beams cut through space, destroying several additional drones. But each time a drone exploded, the others adjusted their positions. The circle remained perfect. Vexer's tactical officer looked confused. "They're allowing losses," he said. "That makes no sense." Vexer stared at the screen. "No," he said slowly. "It makes perfect sense. They are measuring us." The Talrathi commander realized something important. The drones were collecting combat data. Weapon frequency, shield strength, targeting response time. Every Talrathi attack revealed information, and the drones were recording all of it. Vexer slammed his hand down. All ships focus fire on the large vessel. If the command ship was destroyed, the drones might become useless. Moments later, the Talrathi fleet turned its weapons toward the enormous human vessel approaching from the outer system. 7 warships fired at once. Massive beams of energy crossed millions of kilometers of space. The blast slammed into the front of the ancient ship. For a brief moment, the battlefield filled with light. On the Talrathi bridge, the officers waited. Then the sensor officer spoke quietly. "Commander, the target is still intact." The light faded. The giant vessel continued moving forward. Its shields glowed softly around the hull. The Talrathi weapons had barely scratched it. Inside Outpost Kepri, the command room exploded with shocked voices. Those were heavy cannons. They did nothing. Mara stared at the screen in disbelief. The defensive shields around the ship were unlike anything she had seen before. Instead of reflecting the energy blasts violently, the shields absorbed the energy slowly and redirected it along the hull. It was ancient technology, but incredibly advanced. Commander Rourke spoke quietly. That ship was built to survive wars, and now it was finally being used. Inside the Archon Command Core, the system finished its calculations. Talrathi weapon systems analyzed, shield frequencies mapped, command hierarchy identified. Archon activated Phase 2. Across the battlefield, every remaining drone suddenly changed behavior. Instead of holding position, they began moving again, but not toward the Talrathi ships. They moved toward specific locations in space, points where the Talrathi sensor systems were weakest. Within seconds, the drones deployed small floating devices, hundreds of them, tiny satellites. Then the devices activated. A powerful electromagnetic field spread across the battlefield. Talrathi sensors flickered. Navigation systems malfunctioned. Communication signals became distorted. "Commander!" the sensor officer shouted. "Our targeting systems are losing accuracy." Vexor's eyes widened. "What is happening?" The tactical officer checked the readings. "It appears to be a signal interference grid." The human drones had created a massive electronic warfare network around the fleet. Their weapons were still operational, but their targeting accuracy had dropped dramatically. Meanwhile, the ancient human vessel finally entered the inner system. For the first time, its full size became visible. 22 kilometers of dark metal and silent power. The ship moved directly between the Talrathi fleet and the moon of Kepri, like a wall, a shield, and then it transmitted another message. "Hostile forces have refused withdrawal. Neutralization sequence initiated. Disarmament in progress." Back on the Talrathi flagship, panic began spreading across the bridge. "Commander, our missile systems are offline. Guidance systems failing. Our communications with ground forces are unstable." The interference grid was affecting everything, and the drones were still moving. Now they were approaching the Talrathi ships themselves. Not firing, just approaching. "What are they doing now?" one officer whispered. Vexor watched the display carefully. Then realization hit him. "They're targeting our engines." The drones were attaching themselves directly to the rear sections of the Talrathi warships. Small mechanical devices extended from their surfaces. Cutting tools, energy probes, interface connectors. They were not destroying the ships. They were disabling them. Within seconds, the first Talrathi cruiser lost engine power. Its massive thrusters shut down suddenly. The ship drifted helplessly in space. Another cruiser followed, then a third. The drones worked with terrifying efficiency. Each Talrathi ship was being surrounded by dozens of machines, and the machines were shutting down key systems one by one. Weapons, navigation, engines. Commander Vexor felt something he had not experienced in years. Fear, because this was not a battle. This was control. The humans were not trying to destroy the fleet. They were simply removing its ability to fight. Within minutes, 5 of the 7 Talrathi ships were drifting powerless in orbit. The last 2 tried to escape. Their engines roared to full power, but the drones intercepted them quickly. More cutting devices, more system disruptions. And soon those ships slowed as well. The battlefield fell quiet. No explosions, no burning wreckage. Just 7 silent warships floating helplessly in space. The ancient human vessel moved closer, slow, unstoppable, and for the first time, its main communication system opened a direct channel to the Talrathi flagship. The message was calm, almost polite. "Talrathi Dominion Fleet, you are no longer capable of hostile action. Prepare for containment." But something unexpected happened next. On the Talrathi flagship, Commander Vexor looked at the disabled fleet around him. Then he gave an order no one expected. "Activate emergency beacon." The tactical officer looked shocked. "Commander, that will call reinforcements from nearby Dominion systems." "Yes," Vexor replied coldly. "If this human machine believes the battle is over, it is mistaken. because somewhere beyond the system, the Talrathi Dominion still had many fleets, and the signal for help had just been sent. Space above the frozen moon of Kepri had become strangely quiet. Only minutes earlier, the sky had been full of explosions and weapons fire. Now the Talrathi fleet drifted silently in orbit. 7 powerful warships floated helplessly, while small human drones remained attached to their engines and weapon systems. Every major system was disabled. The battle, for now, was over. Inside Outpost Kepri, the command room felt tense but hopeful. Mara Vance looked at the sensor screens again and again, making sure the readings were real. "They're completely neutralized," she said quietly. Commander Rourke nodded slowly. "Yes, but the fight may not be finished." He was watching another signal that had just appeared on the long-range scanners. A powerful transmission moving away from the Talrathi flagship at the speed of light. A distress beacon. "They call for reinforcements," one of the engineers said nervously. Mara felt the same cold feeling return to her stomach. "How long before another fleet arrives?" she asked. The navigation officer checked the star charts. "If the nearest Dominion patrol group answers the signal, maybe 12 hours. 12 hours sounded like a long time, but in space warfare, it was very short. The Talrathi Dominion controlled many nearby systems. Their fleets were large and aggressive. Even the ancient human vessel might struggle against a full Dominion armada. Mara turned her attention back to the enormous ship. It now floated directly between the moon and the disabled Talrathi fleet, like a silent guardian. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient ship transmitted another message. "Human installation, Kepri. Threat status contained. External reinforcement signal detected. Strategic response adjusting." Commander Rourke frowned. "What does that mean?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "I don't know." But deep inside the ancient vessel, the Archon system was already making its next calculations. Inside the giant ship, massive processors analyzed a new situation. Talrathi distress beacon confirmed. Estimated reinforcement fleets. 2 or more. Estimated arrival time. 10 to 12 hours. Archon evaluated the mission objectives again. Primary objective: protect human lives at Outpost Kepri. Secondary objective: discourage future hostile actions. Neutralizing the current fleet had achieved the first objective, but the second objective required something more powerful. Archon activated a rarely used protocol: strategic demonstration mode. Back on the Talrathi flagship, Commander Vexer stood silently on the bridge. Around him, his officers worked nervously to restore systems. But the drones had disabled almost everything. Engines remained dead. Weapons would not respond. Even internal communication lines had been disrupted. One of the officers spoke carefully. "Commander, the emergency beacon has been received. Dominion Command confirmed they are sending reinforcements." Vexer nodded slowly. "How many?" "At least 2 heavy strike groups." That meant dozens of warships. The officer continued. "They will arrive within 11 hours. Vexer looked out at the giant human vessel floating nearby. For the first time, he wondered if the Dominion had underestimated something important. This ship was not behaving like a normal warship. It had disabled the Talrathi fleet without destroying it. It had used precision, strategy, control, but Vexer still believed numbers would win. When the reinforcement arrived, the Dominion would crush this machine, and the mining outpost would fall soon after. Hours passed slowly. On the surface of Kepri, the Talrathi ground troops had been forced to surrender once their orbiting ships lost power. Human security teams carefully secured them inside the mining facilities. No more fighting occurred, but everyone knew the real battle might still be coming. Inside the command room, Mara remained at her console watching the deep space sensors. Then something unusual appeared on the screen. "Commander," she said, "the ancient ship is moving again." The massive vessel slowly changed position in orbit. It moved farther away from the moon, closer to the disabled Talrathi fleet. "What is it doing?" someone asked. Mara zoomed the camera feed. Large sections of the ship's hull were opening, not drone launch bays. Something else. Gigantic structures extending outward like towers, energy collectors, sensor arrays. Then the ship began broadcasting a powerful signal across space. But it was not directed only at the Talrathi fleet. The transmission spread across the entire star system, across nearby systems, across every open communication channel. The message repeated in dozens of languages. Human, Talrathi, and many others used across the galaxy. The message was simple. Attention all vessels within broadcast range. This system is under protection of Human Strategic Archive Defense Protocol. Hostile military activity has been neutralized. Talrathi Dominion fleet currently detained. Reinforcement forces are advised to alter course immediately. Further escalation will result in system lockdown. Inside the Talrathi flagship, the bridge officers stared in disbelief. That message is being transmitted everywhere, one officer said, even outside Dominion territory. Commander Vexer's expression darkened. This machine is not just defending the outpost. It is making a statement. He understood now. The ancient human ship was sending a warning to the entire region of space. Human colonies were not alone, and somewhere in the darkness, old defense systems were still watching. Back on Kepri, Mara felt a strange sense of awe. That signal will reach dozens of systems, she said. Every trader, every patrol ship, every government will hear it. Commander Rourke nodded, and they'll all know the same thing. What? One engineer asked. Rourke looked toward the enormous vessel outside. That humanity built defenses long ago and never turned them off. 6 hours later, the long-range sensors finally detected the approaching Talrathi reinforcements. Dozens of ships, cruisers, destroyers, carrier vessels. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the outer edge of the system. Inside the command room, everyone watched the screens carefully. Mara whispered quietly, "They're here." The Talrathi armada formed a wide formation as they advanced toward the inner system. Their numbers were overwhelming, more than 30 warships, and they were moving fast. But something unexpected happened as the reinforcement fleet received the human broadcast signal. The Talrathi ships slowed. Then they stopped completely. For several long minutes, nothing happened. The two fleets, Talrathi and the ancient human vessel, remained silent across millions of kilometers of space. Commander Vexer watched the tactical display carefully. He was waiting for the reinforcements to charge forward, but they did not. Instead, a new message arrived from the Dominion Fleet Commander. It was sent directly to Vexer's ship. "Commander Vexer," the message said, "explain the situation immediately." Vexer hesitated. Then he answered honestly, "Our fleet has been completely disabled by a single unknown human vessel." Silence followed. Then the Dominion commander asked a question everyone feared. "A single vessel?" "Yes." More silence. Finally, the Dominion commander spoke again. "Maintain current position. Do not provoke further action." The Talrathi fleet did not advance. They stayed at the edge of the system, watching, because even from that distance, their sensors could see the massive human construct waiting near the moon. And they understood something important. If one such machine existed here, there might be others hidden in the darkness of space. The battle for Kepri had turned into something much bigger. It had become a warning to the entire galaxy. But the final decision about what happened next had not yet been made. For a long time, no one fired a single shot. The star system of Kepri had become a silent battlefield. On one side, 7 Talrathi warships drifted helplessly in orbit around the frozen moon. Small human drones remained attached to their engines and weapons, holding them completely under control. Farther away, the ancient human vessel floated like a giant wall between the moon and the rest of the system. And beyond them, at the edge of the star system, the Talrathi reinforcement fleet waited. 30 warships, cruisers, destroyers, and carrier vessels, a powerful armada. But they did not move forward. Inside Outpost Kepri, the command room remained quiet as everyone watched the sensor screens. Mara Vance had not left her station for hours. Her eyes moved between the displays again and again, checking every signal and every movement in the system. "They're still holding position," she said softly. Commander Rourke stood beside her. "Yes." and they've been there for almost 20 minutes. One of the engineers spoke carefully. Maybe they're preparing a large attack. Rourke shook his head. No, if they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. The truth was something else. The Talrathi fleet was thinking. They had arrived expecting to crush a small mining outpost. Instead, they had discovered a machine from humanity's past that could disable an entire fleet without destroying it. And now the entire galaxy was listening to the broadcast message the ancient ship had sent. Every trader ship, every colony, every military command center. Everyone knew that something powerful was protecting the system. Inside the Talrathi reinforcement flagship, Fleet Commander Dravik studied the tactical display carefully. Dravik was older than Vexer and far more cautious. His fleet had responded quickly to the emergency beacon, expecting to rescue a damaged patrol group. Instead, he found 7 disabled warships and a single unknown human construct dominating the battlefield. His sensor officers continued scanning the ancient vessel. The results made the bridge uncomfortable. Commander, one officer said, the structure's power output is still increasing. Dravik looked up. Increasing? Yes. It appears to be activating additional systems. The officer expanded the sensor data. Massive energy flows moved through the ship's internal reactors. New antenna arrays were opening along the hull. Long-range sensor towers extended into space. Is it preparing to attack? Dravik asked. The officer hesitated. No, Commander. It appears to be scanning. Scanning what? Everything. The ancient ship was analyzing the reinforcement fleet, just as it had analyzed Vexer's ships earlier. Weapons, shields, communication frequencies, movement patterns, every detail. Dravik understood the message clearly. The machine was showing that it could fight if necessary, but it was not choosing to start a war. That decision now belonged to the Talrathi fleet. Back on the ancient vessel, the Archon system completed another evaluation cycle. Threat level had increased but remained manageable. Reinforcement fleet detected. Total hostile vessels, 37. Archon calculated multiple response scenarios. Total destruction of the Talrathi fleet was possible, but unnecessary. The mission objective was protection, not war. So Archon initiated the final communication protocol. A powerful signal was transmitted directly to the reinforcement fleet. Talrathi Dominion Command Vessel. Human Defensive Authority recognizes your arrival. Hostile fleet units, currently disabled but intact. No further conflict is required. Withdraw from the system, and all vessels will be released safely. Inside Fleet Commander Dravik's bridge, the message appeared clearly. The room remained silent for several seconds. Then one officer spoke. Commander, that machine is offering us a peaceful exit. Another officer looked angry. We outnumber it almost 40 to 1. Dravik raised a hand. Numbers are meaningless if the enemy controls the battlefield. He looked at the tactical display again. The drones surrounding the disabled Talrathi ships were still active, and the massive human vessel continued scanning the reinforcement fleet calmly. Dravik had commanded many battles during his career. He recognized the difference between confidence and bluffing. This machine was not bluffing. Meanwhile, inside Outpost Kepri, the human crew waited nervously. Mara checked the sensor readings again. The reinforcement fleet just received a new transmission, she said, from the ancient ship. Commander Rourke crossed his arms. What does it say? Mara read the translated message slowly. It's offering them a chance to leave. One of the engineers looked surprised. After everything they did? Rourke nodded quietly. That ship isn't trying to win a war. It's trying to stop one. Minutes passed. Then the sensors detected movement in the Talrathi fleet. The large armada slowly began turning. Away from the inner system. Away from the moon. Away from the ancient human vessel. Inside the command room, several people gasped. They're leaving, Mara whispered. Commander Rourke allowed himself a small smile. Yes, they're leaving. On the Talrathi flagship, Fleet Commander Dravik sent a final message. To the Human Defensive Authority vessel. The Dominion acknowledges your control of the system. Our forces will withdraw. But understand this. This event will be remembered. The message ended. Moments later, the reinforcement fleet activated its jump drives. One by one, the warships disappeared into hyperspace. The system grew quiet again. Back near the moon, the ancient human vessel remained still. Archon confirmed that all hostile reinforcements had departed. Primary threat level eliminated. Now, only the disabled Talrathi patrol fleet remained. Archon activated another transmission. Talrathi vessels. Hostile actions have ceased. Your systems will be restored. Departure from this system is required. Moments later, the drones attached to the Talrathi ships began detaching. One by one, they returned to the giant vessel. Slowly, the Talrathi warships regained control of their engines. Commander Vexer stood silently on his bridge as the systems came back online. He had lost a battle, but he also understood something important. The humans had shown restraint. They could have destroyed his fleet. Instead, they chose to send a message. Without speaking to anyone, Vexer ordered his ships to leave the system. The Talrathi vessels jumped away soon after. On the surface of Kepri, the human crew gathered near the large observation windows of the station. They watched the sky slowly clear. No alien ships, no weapons fire, just stars, and the enormous ancient vessel still floating in orbit. Mara leaned against the window, quietly. "Do you think it will stay here?" she asked. Commander Rourke shook his head. "I don't think so." As if responding to his words, the giant ship began to move again, slowly, gracefully, turning away from the moon. Its massive engines ignited with soft blue light. Mara quickly checked the sensors. "It's heading back toward the Perseus Drift." "Back into the dark," one engineer said. Rourke nodded. "That's where it was waiting." The ancient vessel transmitted one final message. "Human installation, Kepri. Threat resolved. Defense protocol returning to standby. Continue operations safely." Then the massive ship accelerated slowly into deep space. Within minutes, it disappeared into the distant nebula clouds. Gone, as if it had never been there. Later that night, Mara stood alone in the quiet communication chamber. She replayed the sensor recordings again and again. The enormous ship, the swarm of drones, the calm strategic control of the battle, and the message that had reached half the galaxy. Human colonies were not alone. Somewhere in the dark regions of space, old guardians were still waiting. Machines built long ago, still protecting humanity. Mara looked at the stars outside the station window, and for the first time since the attack began, she felt completely safe, because now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity did not only build fleets. Humanity built guardians, and those guardians were still watching the darkness between the stars. Rocket,